Hi, folks. Just a quick introduction to my guest, Professor Frédéric Leroy. He is a bioengineer and has a PhD in applied biological sciences, and now he holds a professorship in food science and biotechnology. His research deals with animal sourced foods, food processing, fermentation, nutrition, and interdisciplinary food studies. He's a member of academic non-profit societies such as the Belgian Association of Meat Science and Technology, where he's the president, the Belgian Society for Food Microbiology, where he's the president, and the Belgian Nutrition Society. He also serves on the scientific board of the World Farmers Organization, the WFO, and the FAO, or the COAG Subcommittee on Livestock. Frederick is one of the founders of the 2022 Dublin Declaration of the Societal Role of Livestock and the 2024 Denver Call for Action. He was the recipient of the 2022 award of the European Federation of Animal Science, acknowledging his research activities and international recognition within the animal sciences. I'm incredibly excited to speak to this man. I think he's very balanced, well thought out and very objective in his work, not behind a cloud of emotions. And it's a breath of fresh air to hear his views on things. I had a whole list of slides that I had planned to discuss with him, all of his work, which is kind of mind blown when you see it all laid out in front of you. But we didn't get to it, unfortunately. This time we'll get to it next time. But I'm really excited to speak to him about it and to show you exactly what he's done because it will really add depth to your understanding of the times we find ourselves in and the skewed understanding of the role livestock plays in our food systems and our future, and a lot of the misinformation that has shown up in the last while. So thanks for joining. I hope you enjoy. It's a Yeah, he's a really interesting guy, and I really enjoyed this conversation. All right, take care. Welcome to Sustainability for Sinners, a non judgmental, informative, and hopefully helpful place you can learn about sustainability. I focus on health, water, food, energy, antibiotics, detoxifying your life, and much, much more. If you like what you see, then hit the like and subscribe button for more content coming soon. Enjoy! That's nice and easy. Okay, so we're rolling. Welcome, Frédéric Leroy, Professor Frédéric Leroy. How do you pronounce it? Leroy?
Leroy, very good. Yes.
Leroy.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Thanks so much for joining. It's an honor, and I'm a big fan of your work. And I've only been recently, or I only recently stumbled upon your work through a friend of mine, and it's kind of blown my mind because many people intuitively probably know the arguments you're putting forward, but you put them forward in a well-educated, well-researched, um, balanced way that really just, I don't know. It's a rational, informed voice that's constructive and balanced, that's missing from the global conversation around agriculture and protecting the environment, optimizing our systems, but not in a ruthless way that impacts farmers badly or the environment and isn't behind an emotional lens that's clouding your vision with ideologies. Is that okay? Is that an okay description of your work?
It's very kind of you, Chris. Thank you for the roses. But that's what I'm trying to do. Yes.
Yeah, no, I'm deeply impressed. Deeply impressed.
Thank you.
So So how did you get on this track? You're a food scientist, right?
Yes.
So you're probably by very nature you're looking at things objectively and not through your own emotions really to just see what everything that's coming up, weighing it all up and going forward with an evidence-based um, strategy. Um, yeah, can you tell us a little bit about that? How you got on that track?
Yes. Well, I think that's what every scientist should try to do, at least,
Yes,
even though that's not always 100% possible. It's not even possible for me, even if I claim to do so. I have to acknowledge also my own, worldview and biases.
you're human.
At the end,
Yeah.
every scientist is a human being, and I've also have my own interpretation of how things are working, and based on that, I formulate kind of a value system as well. But then within that value system, I of course try to weigh the evidence and adapt and change my views if new evidence comes in. But I think it's inherent to uh, any person coming in, stepping into this debate will come with a certain, you know,
Yeah.
framework already installed. That's
Yeah.
inevitable. But a scientist should always, be prepared to change opinion if the evidence tells you to do so.
Hmm.
And probably should refrain at some point of taking that scientific interpretation to the next steps, which would
Right.
be advocacy. So, and that's probably where I am trying to find my balanced position as well,
Yeah.
because of all the commotion, I sort of had to enter that societal debate as well.
Hmm.
So at some point, you're at that interface, and that's not an easy one. So I think that's something to acknowledge from the very beginning. And the reason why I started to be involved in this conversation is precisely because I was seeing that a lot of the arguments being made were not aligned with what I was knowing to be,
Mm.
you know, the factual background of livestock farming and animal source food production. And that happened a few years ago, and because of that, I specialized in that conversation, if you want.
Hmm.
So originally, yes, I'm a food scientist, but I was trained. My background is a bit complicated. I was trained in Belgium. We call this bioengineering, and that's all sorts of different things. But within that broader constellation, you can kind of find your way into anything that has to do with biological material, right? Whether that's food or you know, human cells and medicine. So I went into the direction of chemistry and then food and then nutrition eventually. And after my master's degree, which was really on the topic of food security in developing countries, I became a food process engineer as well. So I looked at food processing, specifically things like fermentation and microbial conversions and so forth.
Yeah.
And
I
that
can't
happened
wait
to
to
be
ask you about
sorry,
can't
go ahead.
wait to ask you about precision fermentation. Don't let me not ask you about it.
I've worked a lot with fermenters and bioreactors, so I know a lot about the technology involved
Yeah.
and how difficult that is, especially if you want to upscale things and and go
Yeah.
to.
That's why I'm like, it's very hard to find an informed opinion on these things. So I
Right,
can't wait to hear your thoughts. I'm not advocating for it. I just want to hear your thoughts.
right, yeah, we can
Yeah.
come to that for
But
sure.
sorry, didn't mean to interrupt you there.
Well, I was almost finishing, so I then looked into food processing and uh, conversions of agricultural materials, and at some point, animal sourced food, specifically meat, became my case study more than anything else. It just was one of the projects where it was funding at the time, European project, and it was dealing with meat. And I looked into meat conversion, meat safety, meat quality,
Mhm.
and it was more or less the time when the conversation started to change. And then as I just realized that my case study became a very controversial one, and that was very strange because the thing I was working on became something that had so many layers of meaning and
Yeah.
emotion that it was just very interesting. So the more this became obvious to me, the more I got interested in animal sourced foods and meat in particular. and I started to become also kind of a generalist in that scientific domain, which goes from environmental aspects over human nutrition to, food safety, food quality, to cultural dimensions and ethical discussions, you name it.
I can only imagine going down that specialization and then realizing how it's
Mm,
linked to all
right.
the
Yeah.
other things and
Yeah.
that
And
they all interact constantly with one another.
absolutely. And it's also a very interesting window to look at
Yeah,
the broader
yeah,
reality, because the conversation you're having specifically on on a food group, right? It's nothing more than a food group, but
yeah.
it touches upon so many aspects of our daily lives that it just
hmm
becomes a very interesting window to look at reality and at many dynamics within society today, whether it has to do with freedom of speech or with choice and governmental interference, or many discussions actually appear within that
Even
debate.
our future, Frederick.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
it's like, do you like steak? Are you jeopardizing our future?
Yes.
Or or the other side, is that the safe way forward, the chemical future that, say, Bill Gates and co are
Right.
hoping that we adopt more and more of? Yeah, it's everywhere, and everyone eats food, so it's like it's everyone's business to figure this out. And in a time of a world that's completely confused by this stuff, like I think you showed a slide before of um was it over 10 or 15 years, the Daily Mail, the
Mm.
different headlines they had that were conflicting with one another, even in one newspaper. So if you're trying to figure all this stuff out, um, it's I mean, like I'm probably only at the tip of the iceberg, but and I have time dedicated to this, so I can only imagine that the average person who living a busy life has nothing to do with farming or the environment or food production or anything. How are they supposed to navigate this and have even like a 50% certainty that they're doing the right thing? It's like it's an onslaught of madness of good and bad and everything. And I don't know how to distinguish between it all or how to explain it to people what to look out for. Do you have any tips there?
Well, it's difficult because people nowadays people formulate opinions about many things, including very technical topics that before people wouldn't even touch. Whether that's
Yeah,
hydrodynamics or whatever, just name it. People have opinions, but food
yeah,
is particularly interesting because, as you say, everyone eats, but also food is diets are a very have a very strong um, identitarian aspect, right? People identify with their diets. You kind of use your diet to communicate to other people what your belief system and values are. And we've
yeah.
been doing that since a long time, particularly since the 19th century, the mid 19th century. We've been
Yeah.
using diets within the middle classes mostly to
Right.
position ourselves within societal conversations. So there's a French sociologist called Bourdieu.
Yeah.
He worked on this specifically, and he talks about cultural capital versus economic capital,
hmm
and so food can be positioned within that space. It has cultural value, and
Right.
it also has economical value. So some people don't care about it. They would kind of even see it as snobbery to um,
I shop
something
at
for the
Whole
elites,
Foods.
right?
I
Yes,
only eat organic
and
or
kind of
whatever.
distance
Yeah.
themselves from sophisticated food cultures. Others will use it precisely to impress other people. So, and then
Yeah.
within that discussion, you now also have the discussion or the position around the eating of meat and animal foods. Whether you're a
hmm
meat eater or not is kind of a way to tell the others what your identity is.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'm pretty convinced that a lot of the people that are now vegetarian or flexitarian or even vegan,
Yeah.
their first driver will be the societal identitarian. means it offers them to talk about themselves rather than the actual concerns behind that. It's not valid for everyone, of course. Many are driven as well by genuine ethical concerns, but a lot of them are using it as a means to position themselves within the bigger picture of social anxiety. Mostly, it's driven by anxieties for the largest part.
I was about to say it's probably more a feeling of I need to fit in rather than boasting about it. Well, I mean, you might boast about it once you're in the whatever diet clan you're in, but like you're talking to a person that was 20 years vegetarian. I was raised that way. So and now I eat meat. And I work with my uncle on a suckler farm.
Right.
So beef, yeah. So I've done, but like I grew up with all sorts of people around me. And I would hope that they wouldn't judge me on my diet. Like I've always had predominantly friends that ate meat, but they never did anything other than make fun of me about eating vegetable lasagna at Christmas time or something,
Yes.
But like I'd love to move away from the diet wars and just talk about the fundamentals and health and how serious these issues are about the cows, the climate change. They said it was 51% of greenhouse gas emissions came from cows for a long time, or the cowspiracy, and that's long been debunked, but it's still floating around in people's heads that cows are, if we sort out cows, then we're going to sort out most of climate change. And you're kind of going, wow, okay, this is stuck in the whatever you'd call the zeitgeist of the moment. And I don't know how easy it's going to be to get away from it, other than raise people's voices like yours and your work to show that we've been kind of, I don't know, conned, or there's other reasons for framing it that cattle and sheep are huge contributors to climate change. And I think it all relates to money, to be honest, and deflection. But I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Well, I think money is a factor, but I don't think it explains everything. I think ideology is still very important as well. It's the mixture of profit and ideology. And we can have that discussion as well if you want at some point. But relating to your previous question about how do we deal with this, this information and this confusion we have and those numbers that are being thrown around, some introspection, I think, is also interesting. If you're taking whatever dietary position you're taking, whether you're a vegetarian or a carnivore or an omnivore, a flexitarian, the question you need to ask yourself is at some point, why am I eating this way? What I'm actually, what is behind that? Why am I doing this? Because if you don't confront yourself with your own filters, it's going to be difficult to, look at those numbers and not embrace the one that is most convenient to you. Right?
Yeah.
Why are you doing it? If you're a vegetarian, and you may have very good reasons to be one, okay? So my intention is never to discourage people from being vegetarians if they wish to, but then so if you position yourself as such, then be aware of the fact that you're trying to get to that information that is convenient for your perception. And if you're able to acknowledge the true reasons and the true motivations you have, I think you could have a fair look at the information and probably move on more productively. And that could just, you could perfectly remain a vegetarian, but at least you would be aware of, the disinformation and the kind of dynamics that are trying to create hostility between those fractions, and come to a more nuanced and relaxed way of looking at the diet. Because I think we need to relax a bit more. That would be the first step, right? Just chill down. We're talking about food. It's part of our daily lives. If you're going to stress about something we do 3 times a day or more, it's not going to be a very interesting life if this is going to create anxiety every time we put something in our mouth.
True. Yeah, wow, you're dead right. I do think we need to take a chill pill on this a little bit as well. and be able to just talk to one another again about it,
Right.
because
Yes.
I feel like we are like intentionally being divided. I've I interviewed a lady who goes under the name Dairy Girl Diaries, who she's part of the point raised farms that are being shut down by an NGO, three environmental NGOs, and one of them, the Watersheds Project, I think they're called. They're outright against any type of cattle enterprise, so intensive and extensive, and they just want it all gone. So basically, all animals off the land, and you're watching like you know Stephanie said many of these are organic farms or regenerative farms, and it's gotten to a point where it's pretty damn vicious, this whole thing. And this is livelihoods at stake. So
Yeah.
it's my fear is that people are being truly misled, and people are playing on their heartstrings or on fear,
Mm.
that if we don't solve this, then yeah, the world's going to end because of climate change. And I feel that people, if they could see things like what you're explaining there and understand the money in the background that's greasing the wheels, they might look at this a little bit differently. And also the impact, the overall impact, say, of the monoculture intensive high chemical industry has, and the long-term consequences of that if it keeps going. If I played, this is silly, but I played it through on ChatGPT. I asked if the plant-based version of the plan forward was to come to full fruition, what would it look like? And
Mm.
it just, this sharp, sharp, sharp increase in chemicals forever more, really, complete soil depletion, um, emissions rising from the soil, death to all wildlife, in the sense of, the show, the animals are far than wood. It's like a cartoon show of foxes and badgers and
Yeah.
mice and everything. And I was thinking, these are the things that are going to be killed by this as well. It's not only the animals on the land, and then it's going to hurt us in our health as well, or it's going to jeopardize it. And I'm like, that just doesn't sound like a very good option for the future. To do it even 20% sounds dangerous, of 100% of a world, say, sounds dangerous. Um, and I understand the complexities of moving away from chemicals, and I work on a farm that isn't organic, right?
Mm.
But I don't think we need to ramp up so rapidly chemicals that we know are hurting us. That just sounds illogical to me. Um, yeah, I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on that, Frederick?
No, I'm with you. It's so the problem is that a lot of the academics in this conversation are um, basing their entire work on future predictions and modeling. So the
Hmm.
modeling exercises, which always are very fragile exercises because they depend on the assumptions you build into the models. Right?
Yeah,
It goes back all the way to the limits to growth report from the Club of Rome in 1971, where you kind of predict what the future will give you, and then you come up with scenarios or new ways of dealing with reality that will make everything better. But most of the times, those simulations are flawed because you
mm,
build in those assumptions that again, that's why you have to be able to see through all the biases and the factors that will narrow down your worldview, and you end up with those assumptions that are convenient for you. Modelers do the same thing. They build a model that
yeah,
is suitable to their worldview, and then they come up with something like, okay, livestock is the worst thing that can happen to the planet because it takes up all the land without having any differentiation between types of land, or they
yeah,
say it takes up all the water without differentiating between types of water and regions where you have water scarcity versus we have places where
yeah,
you have lots of rainfall.
Yeah.
You have all sorts of
Ireland.
exactly. Yeah, so you have all sorts
Yeah.
of complicated realities that are very dependent on the context that can change your story completely. So they build in those assumptions, then they come up with a model that is supportive of their view, and then they come up with a solution, which is again extremely simplistic. Or let's just eliminate all livestock, and then we can just fill everything with crops or with trees to sequester carbon, as if you can plant trees anywhere in the world. And that's the issue. So those academics come up with papers in prestigious journals. They end up on the tables of policymakers, and they shape policies. I can give you an example that I recently discovered a few months ago. Like talking about 2-3 months ago, a report was published by the European Environmental Agency. It's not a policy report, but it's something meant to inform policy people. And it talks about the future of the food system, among other things. And it's about futurism and scenarios and how to transition the food system to a more sustainable one, which is all good if you just take it on the word. But essentially, what they then do is come up with 4 imaginaries. They call that. It's like 4 imagined futures that they define based on conversations between experts, and they say, okay, we're going to go this or this direction, and this will come with this kind of food system. And even though it's called imaginaries, it shows how limited their imagination is, because 4 imaginaries all refer to almost eliminating animal foods, right? And 3 of them come up with the solution of cultured meat, so meat in bioreactors. The other one is about agroecology, but again, it's about eating pulses and staying away from meat as much as you can. And all 4 of them insist on taxing and interventionist measures to make it difficult for people to taxes on meat and taxing. You go further, you go to dairy, and so if you would leave it up to them, they would tax everything. So so it's just to show how those people think and how limited they are in their understanding of what people actually want and how reality actually works, and trying to impose that very reductionist view they have in their they're limited, they're up there in their bubbles and echo chambers, and try to impose it with force upon the planet. And that's what you see with the Eat Lancet diet as well. So the Eat Lancet people, in their first Eat Lancet report, because a new one is coming up soon, they've just written.
Frédéric, can you explain what the Eat Lancet is?
Sure. Yes, of course, because that's not something that everybody will know. Of course, Eat Lancet is a high-level document written by a variety of scientists from Harvard, Oxford, other places, with a plan for the planet with respect to diets and agricultural systems. So it's a semi-vegetarian diet. They call that the planetary health diet. So it's meant for everyone on the planet. It's a template, and it allows animal foods, but in very, very small amounts. They suggest something like 7 grams of beef per day and 1.5 eggs in a week. And they also allow for Frédéric. You see, so that's the kind of cereal dominated diet fortified with nuts and oils and things that they want to impose on the entire planet, with only an allowance for small amounts of animal source foods. Interestingly, to make the story complete, the diet has been designed based on health assumptions. It's coming from Walter Willett, Harvard University, and it's not even designed to save the planet. They have tested it against planetary boundaries, and they say, well, it's fine for the planetary boundaries, even though it comes with issues that they don't like to address. But it's designed for health, which makes it even more absurd. And so that is created by the EAT Foundation. What I'm trying to say with this is that because the whole thing is essentially an initiative coming out of the World Economic Forum in Davos, it's meant to shape policies. And within the Eat Lancet document, you'll find a paragraph where they say that they do understand that people will not accept this diet, right? But they argue that it should be imposed because they want to overrule what they literally call consumer whim. Consumer whim, they call it. So the frivolous choices of consumers have to be overruled by the experts, and they want to.
Wow.
Yeah, and they want to do so using hard policy interventions. So that meets the tax approach I just mentioned in the European documents. So it's because the only way to shift the food system to such a diet is through hard policy interventions. So what does that mean? It means taxing. It means removing foods from public meals, like public canteens, schools, or hospitals, schools, and so forth. Fiscal measures of all sorts, making it very difficult for farmers to operate, making it very difficult for retailers to have to maintain their access to the financial markets if they don't perform the protein shift. Law by making the animal welfare regulation much more difficult and strict, so it becomes very difficult again to make it a feasible operation, and so change the legislative framework, the financial framework, and at the same time force consumer behavior through interventions. Although it's often presented as nudging and dietary guidelines and so on, they're working on the hard policy interventions.
That's so scary.
Well, that's what we come back to the beginning of the conversation where I said, this discussion about meat and animal source foods is more than just a food choice. It's the clash you have between freedom as an individual to organize your life, and we're talking about one of the most fundamental aspects of our lives, that is what we eat, and how we have to choose those diets in function of our needs and everybody being different as well. And the clash with authoritarian visions that are based on expert-led interventions in our daily lives, and how you should weigh those two. Should we give them full control? Should we actually diminish it to a minimum and then keep it at the minimal level? Or is there somewhere in between that we should eventually find a balance between both? And that's the discussion that is appearing in many different conversations nowadays. How should you weigh the individual liberty versus authoritarian interventions? So it's a much bigger discussion than just what you put on your plate.
Absolutely. So just say in the UK, they're kicking up about, well, the farmers are very angry at the inheritance tax that's been imposed on them, because that's a sure sign that whoever's inheriting it might not be able to pay this whatever 20%, I don't know what it is, on the inheritance, and that would break a family farm, say. Then you have things like the carbon tax that will genuinely hurt farmers, no doubt about it, unless it's figured out in a good way. But I can't see any good, solid way of that being safe. And in Germany, they promised, if I get it right, they promised that it wouldn't impact the farmers if they increased the carbon tax. And then later on, they didn't pay out because whatever funding didn't work out for them. So the farmers got hurt. There's multiple examples of all of this happening, and you feel like the walls are closing in on farmers. And sorry, going back to the UK, when I did my master's in sustainable environments, there was one thing on energy that stuck out to me about carbon floor pricing in the UK. So they wanted to get rid of the coal industry, Margaret Thatcher era. And the last thing they did to really kill it out was the carbon floor tax. And I'm not debating about coal being dirty fossil fuel or anything, but it's like once the state has made its mind up, or the actors that are in government and policymakers, if they've made their mind up that they want to cripple that industry, they will use any tactic around it. And for the coal industry, the final nail in the coffin was the carbon floor pricing. And for the family farms, you're playing with the fire of adding the inheritance tax, and then the climate policy that might reduce the amount of stocking rate you can have on your land, the emissions derogations, the nitrates derogations, and all of a sudden you've made the whole thing not financially viable, extremely difficult to operate within, so much so that you're regulated quite heavily, as the small guys apparently are getting regulated very harshly, and the big guys not enough probably, and you're making the whole thing just unattractive and daunting and potentially bankrupting if you choose to continue in the industry or pass it down to your kids or whatever. And if it feels like that's exactly what you're describing there, that it's all part of this a larger picture, that once you talk about it, it sounds like you're a conspiracy theorist and you're overly paranoid about everything. But if it's just, say, money in the background that's driving a global agenda, then I think that's perfectly reasonable to assume that the inheritance tax is also part of this bigger thing. And it's not just trying to get more money on the exchequer, it's just trying to actually actively harm an industry of
Yeah, I
small
was saying
farms.
that's exactly right. You also have the nitrogen regulations in the Netherlands, for instance, and so that's exactly right. So they're suffocating the agricultural industries. That's what or at least part of the agricultural industries. So then the next question is, why are they doing this? Well, part of it is just incompetence, but part of it is also the fact that indeed there are certain agendas of certain people gaining in the process. So who's gaining in the process? Well, you do have, for instance, I mentioned Eat Lancet before. The Eat Foundation has a formal working link with the World Business Council for Sustainable Development. They call that the FRESH initiative. And those are all the big agri-food players,
Agrochemical,
yeah,
like,
agrochemicals, but also food multinationals, food processors.
oh, okay.
So
Yeah.
why are they doing this? Well, I think, of course, there's a business model there. If you get rid of all these, the annoying livestock farmers, because you
Yeah.
actually can shift that whole um, production system to one that is more under their control. And
Yeah.
that what is the best model? Well, the monoculture model. So you
Yeah.
just produce grains and oils, and then you turn them into ultra processed foods,
Yeah.
and that's exactly what they've been doing all those decades. And so the more people are turning their back on wholesome
Like,
primary foods, whether that's from
yeah.
animal or plant origin, the more they can control it.
Yeah.
So that's
Yeah.
why all the big ones, including some of the big meat producers, have tried to invest in the plant-based market,
Right.
or in the lab culture, the cultured meat market. They've been, from the Nestle's to over the Unilevers, even to Cargill and JBS, they've been investing in those technologies as well. Some of them
Yeah.
have dropped out because it's not working and people are rejecting it. But
Yeah.
it's a business model for some. And you
Yeah.
don't need to be foolish about it. There's money to be gained. Then there's also the fact that a lot of billionaires and venture capitalists also are interested in this. Not only because of the potential gains you can make from those new technologies, but also because there's a battle over resources. Especially land. So what takes up most land? Well, agriculture takes up quite a bit of land, and within agriculture, livestock agriculture, particularly ruminants, take up a lot of land.
Yeah.
Um,
Sure.
and so land is a particularly valuable resource in the future when the financial markets are going to become increasingly fragile and vulnerable to crisis. Land will become even more important.
Right. Yeah.
So there's a battle over land and over global resources. And then there's the ideological part that I mentioned before. And there's nothing more dangerous than ideology fusing with profit seeking. that's when it really becomes dangerous. And you have huge amounts of money coming in from effective altruist foundations. So effective altruists are those kinds of utilitarian, it's utilitarian philosophy where you kind of have the view of an accountant on the moral system, right? So you weigh pros and benefits and harms, and then you calculate in a way, even if it's not a formal calculation always, what the net outcome is, and then you act accordingly. So you look at
like a
values as if
robot.
you can just as if you can just sum it up and calculate it and make a wise decision because so that's a tradition going back a long time. It's mostly from the English speaking world, especially the English were trendsetters in this. But then it evolved into effective altruism, and those kind of people now are very often also in favor of the vegan cause, and that is because they think that veganism does effectively this thing. It minimizes the harm if you calculate value as the amount of life or suffering. So they have this whole intricate calculation. They say, well, we have to go vegan because of that. Moreover, very often, especially in the Silicon Valley bubble, those effective altruists, because a lot of Silicon Valley guys are effective altruists, it's almost a cult. Well, actually, it is a cult if you think of it.
Effective altruism. Effective altruism is basically trying to make the world better through your actions, but that are far-reaching. Yes.
And then it's the matter of how do you calculate better? How do you define better? And so that's of course, the most important part of it. Very often also they are transhumanists. And now think of it: if you really believe in a transhumanist future, then you don't want to keep the distinction between humans and things, right? And the distinction between humans and animals is a bit bothersome. So if you can blur that boundary, it makes it easier to blur all the other boundaries, and you just get to those cyborg kind of constructions. So this very cultish belief system where effective altruism has evolved into something almost science fiction-like. One of the most extreme examples is called long-termism. So it's when you are so much of a utilitarian fundamentalist that you kind of calculate benefit over a very long time horizon. So you wouldn't mind destroying 90% of today's population because in the future you will have 1,000 times or more of that population with more benefits, right? It's very extreme. So it's a very dangerous kind of philosophy because it implies that you can position certain practices above others in ways that take their distances from our conventional value system, where you value human lives and human beliefs, because that's what you have to take into account in moral systems. But they say, well, no, it depends on the overall picture, where you have to calculate all the sentient beings that are being killed and so forth and so on. So I'm saying this now just for the simple reason that the flux of money coming from Silicon Valley is more than just profit seeking. It's ideologically driven, which means also that they're investing irrational amounts of money into technologies that are not going to give them the gains that normal venture capitalists would be expecting.
Wow. So we're their collateral damage if we're hurt by these transitions of their plans.
Yes. Yeah. That's what all those, the whole technocratic movement going back to the late 19th century, early 20th century, where particularly the technocracy movement then in the early 20th century, that whole movement of technocratic interventions is very anti-human to begin with. It's all based. So the value is created in the future. It's about utopia. You create your value in the future. You don't care so much about the present, because, as you say, there's the collateral damage will happen, but it's for the good, because eventually we'll be better off. The problem is that this is also the basis for any central planning vision that we've been seeing over the last decades that ended up in complete horror. Right? You can think about what happened under certain totalitarian regimes. And
can I talk to you about? Have you ever heard of Trofim Lysenko?
Yes.
Finally, someone knows. I was just like, it's lunacy what that guy managed to pull
Yes,
off, right?
exactly.
And
Yeah.
for anyone who's listening and doesn't know who Trofim Lysenko is, I don't blame you, but we should be talking about him more because of what happened under his policies. So he's an agronomist, I think.
Mhm.
Um, and he was
Well,
under the
yeah,
Stalin,
or
right?
geneticist. I don't know. Yes, whatever. But he was involved into the agricultural
Yeah.
schemes.
For,
Yes.
for the average person, they're all the same. You
Right.
could be an ecologist and they'd be like, oh, okay. Um, but this guy had these great, just for the listener, this guy had these, he's a discredited scientist now, but he was under Stalin, and Stalin appointed him as the main guy pretty much to be in charge of the food systems. And it went along the line of collectivization drives, putting all the farms together to make them big plots of land, rapid industrialization. So they wanted to keep up with the West. So they took the farmers off the land to put them into the factories to build steel and infrastructure and weapons. And his crazy kind of agricultural ideas of planting um, seeds very much close together. I can't even think of all the ideas that he had, but they it went so wrong, and he wasn't able to be contested by any scientist. Um, they'd either be shot or jailed if they spoke out against him, and the it turned into Russia's biggest famine. And then the cherry on top then is that later when Mao came into power in China, he admired Stalin so much that he adopted Trofim Lysenko's uh, policies. So, and that precipitated into Chinese, the biggest famine in the world. So number one and number two famines in the world were the Chinese and the Russian famines, and they were all created in part, at least, by Trofim Lysenko, a discredited scientist with mad notions in his head. And then you look at today's world of what we're tinkering with in the soil, um, releasing
Right.
chemicals from the sky, gene editing, and I'm not saying that there's probably a reasonable argument for a few things. I know a genetic engineer who does like it, but he'll go through the nuance with it. But my God, we're really playing with fire, and we're doing it at a global scale. Like it's
Hmm.
not, it's not like when this went wrong in Russia, um, apparently the US finally came through and probably for good money and sent them over a lot of food. But first happened cannibalism in certain parts where they had like even the signs on shops of looking for small children, like that was in part of it. So like really grim stuff. And but we're doing it, we're trying to roll out these whatever GMO crops and everything worldwide. So like there's not even if this goes really, pardon my French, if this goes really tits up, then we mightn't have anywhere else to get food for the time that it goes wrong if we continue to roll out this massive thing of genetic engineering and loads of chemicals. So I don't know. Would you agree
Yeah. Well,
that
that's
we're playing with
essentially.
fire a little bit?
Yeah, yeah. That's essentially the point I'm trying to make. And this, and there are other examples. You can think of Cambodia. There are some places in Africa that have been interventions as well, of radically restructuring the food system. Whatever you can call
Yes.
food system.
Yeah.
Ending up in disaster, famines, all sorts of major societal sorts of damage.
Well,
Um, and what so it illustrates the point that it's not always just profit. If anything,
mm,
Lysenko was acting out of ideology, not because of
right.
profit, right? So
So he truly
ideology
believed
can,
it.
can yeah,
Yeah.
through believers. So when you have this
Yeah.
thing, so people access to power, which are often wealthy and profit seekers, but not always necessarily so, as you
Hmm.
illustrated with the Soviet types of
Yeah.
interventions. Ideology is at least as important. And if you
Right.
have them both together now in this kind of
So winning combo.
synthesis between central planning Soviet style with predatory capitalism as you find it in today's
Communism
service.
meets
Yeah,
capitalism
yeah, well,
2.0.
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, those are even more dangerous
yeah.
because they're even more powerful, right?
What was the saying? You better fear the day that a man is coming towards your house to try and save you. You know,
Yes,
back,
yes, pretty
back.
much that. Yes.
Oh Christ.
Yeah.
So so okay, precision fermentation. Do you see any issues with it? Or because on the say the plant-based side, there are people quite strong advocates, say like George Monbiot, that want precision fermentation, but also are vegan and won't eat it themselves. So it's kind of what's been suggested to the rest of us that eat meat as the perfect solution, and to take the animals off the land, to rewild and cue precision fermentation to be a good carrier of protein and all our essential nutrients. Do you think that will solve all our problems?
Well, we need to distinguish between a few things. So those people generally they're putting all their hopes on the alternatives because they know that animal source foods cannot just be taken out of the system. There's too much evidence against that. Even the Eat Lancet diet, once again, it has been shown that the diet is deficient in certain nutrients.
Right.
So you just run into trouble. So they're putting all their bets on the replacement of those foods with either plant-based imitations, and that's your pea protein burger kind of thing, which is usually ultra processed foods that enter through a fast food window because they are either burgers, schnitzel, sausages, and so on. So they promote fast food culture.
Yeah.
It's never a wholesome ribeye imitation thing. No, it's
No, no,
always
no.
something that
You're
you
right.
hide in a bun or
I
in a.
I was expecting that to come before any of the other things. Like a thing grown from cells to make a steak that looks like a steak. No, that hasn't come at all.
No,
It's
because
just the
they can't.
process stuff.
That's the thing. They can't because it's way too difficult. It's already difficult to have a good piece of meat, right? Or a good cheese,
Yes.
or
Yeah.
why is that? Because
Yeah.
it depends on so many different factors, on the feed, on the way the fat marbles, the piece
Yeah.
of meat, and the breed, and the age of the animal upon slaughter. So it's a very complicated thing. You cannot
Yeah.
make that in a bioreactor, which are just myoblasts and muscle cells that multiply and become an amorphous mass. The only thing you can do
Damn.
with it is structure it in a
Yeah.
burger or sausage or something that you can hide in it.
Okay, so you make it look like the burger, and then
Yeah, yeah,
you don't have
yeah,
to. It
and
would
and you
look like
cover it
meat otherwise.
you
Yeah.
cover it with dough or with breadcrumbs, or you put it in a bun. You put sauce on top of it. The only thing that
Right.
is on the market now are these kind of nuggets of chicken nuggets in Singapore. They're not even completely lab made chicken. They're mixed with other stuff, and they're nuggets. Right?
Yes.
You can,
Yeah.
it's a very low barrier, like a very
Yeah. You'd
yeah.
like basically you're saying it just has to kind of taste good, and there you have to take it by you have to take them for their word that it is good for you,
Yeah, and it
which
doesn't even have to
is
taste
is
good. It
very
just doesn't.
scary.
It just doesn't have to taste bad. That's it. Because
Yeah.
that's also why at least the plant-based imitations are so ultra processed because the stuff they use to make it just tastes bad. It's oil and protein
Um,
isolate. Essentially, that's
yeah.
what it is,
Yeah.
and that's horrible for the palate. So they have to kind of ultra process to make it edible
Um,
and make it attractive or make it look like what they're supposed to
right.
imitate. So
Right.
colorants, flavors, texturizers, so many processing steps, and inevitably it becomes ultra processed.
Yeah.
So that's one approach. That's you go to start from plant-based materials that come from monoculture crops, oil
Hmm.
crops or cereals or pulses. But then you fractionate them, you get the fractions you need, and then you make that food concoction out of it. That's the
Right.
plant-based route. The other one is lab meat or
Right.
lab fish or whatever you want to make, which starts from muscle cells and that creates a mass, which is again not going to look like a piece of meat, but has to be worked into something that approximates
Yeah.
it,
Yeah.
like a nugget or a burger. So the first burger that was launched by Mark Post in the Netherlands was a burger. Now you have in Singapore the chicken nuggets.
Oh, sorry.
So the real piece of meat is never really there, right?
Right.
But that's the minor problem. The major problem they have with the lab meat is that you cannot just not upscale it. And that's because the bioreactor technology is very delicate.
Mm-hmm.
It's feasible to do it, and the examples are there, but it needs to have almost pharmaceutical levels of control over the process, not to have contaminations, and so forth.
Yeah.
It's very difficult to upscale it to bulk production. Imagine if you want to replace the entire animal source food production with lab meat. It will never happen, if you ask me. It will never happen. And it's very energy intensive as well.
Yeah, I was just about to say, and the energy intensity to do something like that, it must be colossal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they're just saying, okay, we'll fix it with solar energy or whatever, but
Yeah.
let's see that happen. And then the third one to take out the confusion is precision fermentation.
Right.
Precision fermentation has the intention to produce specific molecules like milk proteins or something, and then use those to make a cheese.
Mm-hmm.
And that's classical biotechnology as we've been knowing it since a long time, only now directed at food molecules. But then again, so it's very often claimed that we will be able to make cheese, and some people have already made cheese with precision fermentation. Or you can, but again, we know how difficult it is to make good cheeses. And if you try to make a cheese just with some molecules that you just put together, that's not going to be a cheese. It's going to be a collection of molecules that happen to be in cheese as well. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
But then you have the other, and the final one, that is precision fermentation Monbiot style. That's where you don't even try to create food as we know it. You just create blob. You create microbial mass, or you.
So
what
they be eating in the Matrix in the spaceship
yes, right.
when the world has ended.
Yeah. So Monbiot processes this kind of pancakes that they make. Like.
Oh, he did. He talks about the pancake all the time. You should see the pancake. It's great.
I haven't come anywhere near to such a pancake, but that's indeed a science fiction kind of approach to it.
So, okay, I understand the lay of the land. Would you think that George Monbiot's stance is then a good stance or a reasonable stance to be expecting us to go forward? Because he's a very influential guy. And dare I say it, back in the day, I read his articles in the Guardian about capitalism and consumerism, and I said, yeah, the man's making some good points. I've seen him cry on TV, so I know he's not faking it, if you know what I mean. I've seen him put it to some what the hell are they? I can't remember the airliner, but he was calling them out on their fake predictions of, hey, we're going to be CO2-less by a certain. And I was like, hey, like he seems like a man with integrity. But now, like getting closer to this stuff and understanding his stance on, say, rewilding and putting wolves back in parks, where I don't know if that's a fully thought out plan or one that's I'm hearing feedback where wolves have been reintroduced and it's not going well. So it might work in Yellowstone Park, but I don't know if it'll work everywhere. And I would be personally quite worried if they started reintroducing them in Ireland, because we don't have barriers around the areas where the trees are, and the population could go out of control, and we're not used to dangerous animals. Or the most dangerous thing we have in Ireland is the bull. Like the bulls in the field. So on that background, I'm starting to kind of go, or well, I've long actually kind of thought it's gone off the deep end now. I can't reasonably stand behind what he's promoting. And I also wonder, has he been captured ideologically that he can't see this clearly anymore? Or is there another agenda? I know he's invested in this stuff, but as you said, like if you believe in something, you know, you will invest in it because you believe it's the future. So when I see that stuff on the internet, oh, Shady Mombeo, he's invested. I don't believe that that's the thing, but I do feel like he might be uh, seeing things through an idealistic view of the world and how it should be, and I don't think it's good for us or the animals or the future, and
Yeah.
it's a chemical future.
Yes.
Do you understand
Yes.
what I'm talking about?
Yes. 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 Absolutely.
So
Yes. Absolutely. I
you
think you put it
riding,
very well. Yes. It's someone coming, and I agree with you. I think he's coming from a position of genuine concern,
yeah,
wanting to change things, but being trapped in that ideological virtual reality. And the more he becomes famous because of that, the more he's investing his whole identity in that specific narrative, and the
yes,
more he radicalizes himself. So it's a
yeah,
very interesting divide between the old school ecological movement, as you had it in the UK, still represented today by such people as Simon Fairley, for instance. With
never heard of him.
well, you look him up. He represents actually the ecological view that things should be in a natural balance, and there's a place for animals. Okay, maybe we have to rethink how much we eat and how we produce, but they're part of that more
Natural
holistic,
system.
natural, you know, um, robust system that has been shaped over a very long time, and that we have a place in as humans as well, which is not at the top of it, but somehow integrated in that system. That's the
Yes.
old ecological point of view that the Greens had in the early days. And so, and
Hmm.
then now, and it was usually very much also insisting on freedom of expression and um, anti-establishment,
Hmm.
anti-corporation. That's the legacy they come from.
Yeah, yeah,
Nowadays, a big part, not all, but especially the newer generations, and Mombio is kind of going in that direction as well, coming from an older tradition, is very pro-corporate. So they're asking corporations to save them through their
yeah,
technologies. They're very much anti-participatory societies because they
yeah.
want to impose their views rather than having it then move on through dialogue. So they're actually clashing. Ultra processed food is another example. They're
The
pro ultra
new
processed
age.
foods, and instead
Yeah,
of being all, because before it was all about organic and about
absolutely.
So
How did that happen?
it's a very big contrast between the new greens and the old greens.
That,
And you
yeah,
don't recognize. I mean, if they would look in the mirror, they wouldn't just something is fundamentally happening there. And somehow I suspect that Mombio has found his own trajectory
yeah.
in that pathway, coming from deep ecology, going through tech fix kind of
Hmm.
ecological solutions.
Yeah. Because what we have on this earth right now isn't working. So we need a new silver bullet kind of solution
Right.
from the
Yes.
outside.
Yes. Yes. And then you come up to that's what I've been busy with, and I have a paper coming out, or it's under revision now, but it's almost there, talking specifically about food system transitions, in
Mhm.
which I refer to the concept systemantics. So that's a terminology used by John Gall. Look it up as well. It's a nice thing to read.
Yeah.
It's a funny little book. It's well written. It's funny. It's nice to read. It's light, but he makes some very good points about systems. So the thing with systems theory is that if you have a very complex system, a large, very complex system, you'll almost certainly fail if you interfere very strongly with that system, because it will backfire, it will hit back, it will just reconfigure itself, and you will have all sorts of collateral damage and trade-offs that you cannot even begin to anticipate
Yeah.
because of the
Yeah.
complexity of that system. So what Gal is saying, if you
Unintended consequences as well.
yes, yes, because of the interference with large systems that are so complex and so
Yeah.
non-linear that you don't know what to expect.
Yeah.
So he's saying that if you interfere with such a system, and the food system is one of the most complex systems we know, if you interfere with the system in a way like this, well, you don't know what's going to happen. You cannot just, and he
Hmm.
also says you cannot build a system from scratch. It doesn't work. You have
Yeah.
to tinker with a system. You have to carefully try it out, see how it
Yeah.
reacts and responds, and move on, and try to find your way
Hmm.
by, not by radically changing it. You can have at some point more substantial interventions if you start figuring out that it seems to go well and you can
Yeah.
proceed with your actions. But you should
Yeah.
be very, very careful.
But you're proceeding with caution.
With caution. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You
Yeah.
build on previous systems. That's why with what we did with a group of scientists is something called the Dublin Declaration.
I'm going to ask you about that.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Dublin Declaration specifically mentions the fact that livestock agriculture is a millennial-old technology, right? It's something we've been, and before that you had hunting, right? So animals have always been there, um, and and that system has changed a lot over time, right? It has been
Yeah.
perfectionated, and it has done miracles for humanity. Now you can either do away with that system and come up with something based on bioreactors that we've never tried, and we
Hmm.
don't know what it will give, or you can try to improve that system, based on the best of the
Optimize it.
science we have, and in cautious ways, so that we don't create scenarios like Lysenko has created, or Pol Pot has created, or
What did Pol
Mao.
Pot do, by the way? What did
Sorry.
Pol Pot, the Khmer Rouge,
Yes,
Cambodia,
yes,
I know,
yeah,
but
yeah. It was,
what
yeah.
did he do?
Well,
I
again,
never heard about it.
agricultural, so kind of central planning ideas interfering
Same
with
crack again.
agricultural, the farmers,
Yeah.
and re-educating farmers, and putting so the whole intervention ideology, where we say we know best because we have this ideological view on what's going to work,
Yeah.
without trying it out really carefully, just radically going for it and then bumping into the wall. Um,
Are you aware of Sri Lanka? The
yeah,
example of
so
Sri.
that's a more
Yes.
recent example, right?
Do you know
It's
what?
again, yeah,
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 I think we can actually, in the weirdest way possible, be grateful that somebody tried it, and then we can go, look what happens if you go too extreme.
yes, but then
Uh,
again, we've had it several times in the past. We should have learned that lesson. Now we should have those examples high up in front, in every policy room. So
right?
remember this one, right? We
Yeah.
don't need
What?
Sri Lanka for that. We have seen worse in the
So
past. So it just
what?
it,
What other? I'm just curious. What other ones? So Sri Lanka, for people who are listening, they decided to go all organic
yeah,
recently, right?
yeah.
Pretty like in the last few years,
Oh yeah,
and it just went the other way. It was a radical policy change, just like pretty much overnight we're going organic, and it just led to all sorts of whatever crop failures and supply chain issues, and it's deemed as a failure because it was too radical. And I always come back to the idea that things can't be radical. It has to be a gradual transition. And when you're talking about farmers and stuff, I just feel like they've been it's like they're been designed to be punished at the moment. For their bad behavior and how things have happened. And
yeah,
I just like my nuance on it in a little bit of a way, sorry for the rant, is that the old boys who are used to doing this stuff the way they're used to doing it, who are already like probably struggling to just like get through the day, shouldn't be excess paperwork pushed on them, excess auditing. If they can reasonably move away from certain chemicals, brilliant, but
mm,
nothing too aggressive. Like, why are you doing that? Um, and then maybe the new ones with carrot, not stick kind of interventions where you
yes,
go, hey, look, if you do this bit extra, you get more money, but not to punish the guys that are just doing the status quo either, of extensive grazing, grass-fed stuff. Like it's minimal amounts of chemicals in comparison to
yeah,
the monoculture. I just that's my honest thing on it. I would hope that that's the least radical way you could push it forward, where you don't step on everyone's toes and get everyone to fight with one another, and the food system becomes more secure and less chemical dependent and healthier for us and for
yeah,
nature.
yeah. And that's also, with the fact that I'm usually opposing all those interventions and people, it makes me almost look like I'm defending what's happening today. I'm not. I'm
Yes.
clearly a supporter of change. Things need to change, but they just need to change cautiously because we're playing with high stakes here. I mean, people that don't have skin in the game don't see that, or see that
No.
less, or they don't even know they have skin in the game. So if you live in your
Yeah.
ivory tower, you just, it's like you're playing a computer game. It's like
Yeah.
you play those simulation games, right? Where you build a city
Yeah.
here and you take out one there, and we're
That's
doing
it.
that
Yeah.
in real
Yeah.
life.
Yeah.
So the dangerous thing is that if this whole stuff collapses, if we don't have farmers tomorrow, we don't have enough farmers to produce our food, what are we going to do? Right? What is going to be the answer?
Yeah.
And imagine that spectacular lab technology hasn't developed as they are anticipating. What happens next?
Yeah.
Right?
Or it
What's the next stop?
fails. Yeah.
Yeah,
Or it's unhealthy for us.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah,
Yeah. See, this way I said your work is a breath of fresh air or your approach because like sorry to sound like you, but you get it. You get it. That it's so it's tricky, it's complicated. Everything's more complicated than we'd like to believe it is. And these quick fix solutions that are bound in ideologies, and then the business side of it comes into it. It's the same. Like the woman that I interviewed 3 weeks ago, she is from the Netherlands and she interviewed farmers and fishermen and looked at the policy, and they're getting the fishermen to destroy their boats, to subsistence fishermen, and the rewilding policy is that 40% of the Netherlands, a highly densely populated country already,
yeah,
should get all of that to be rewilded. It sounds so extreme and kind of just destructive. And um, yeah, she spoke about precision fermentation as well. That doesn't rate it highly at all. And God, I've lost my train of thought on what I was gonna there. But yeah, it's nothing but amazing how disruptive these policies are working away in the background, and it feels like we're not realizing that like we know, but it's happening around us, and farmers have been kind of dehumanized as well because of the 51% thing, like they're jeopardizing our future. The world could burn, and these guys are just kicking up because, they should just get with the times and change. And like we've become, as a society, probably like we don't have farmers' backs as much as we should, realizing they are our food, not even for the honorable jobs they're doing, which, yeah, but out of complete self-interest. If you think that knocking farmers on the head and getting rid of them is going to end in any way good for any of us, it's like,
yeah,
I don't know. It's
yeah.
scary to think that we're not even feeling the need to stand with them. We see them protesting on the motorways or outside, and it looks like, oh, these guys, they hate the environment. They don't
Yes,
hate the environment. Like that's scary stuff. Like it's really. I do hope that people like your voice gets heard more, and people like you that bring a reasonable, balanced thing into it. And that's why your voice is such a breath of fresh air in this, because you aren't going, no, we don't need any change at all. You're saying, yeah, we do, but in a healthy way that doesn't betray the basic pillars of sustainability of keeping the economy in check, people and the environment all together. Um, wh- can I just ask you one thing on
sure.
Noah Yuval Harari?
Yes,
You know that guy?
yes,
He's been admired. I have two of his books here, Homo Sapiens and Homo Deus. Didn't read
yes,
the second one,
yeah,
but I've always thought he was quite a balanced guy, really sees stuff. He's a historian. Yeah. I don't know, a well-rounded guy, well-meaning, benevolent, right? And then as of late, I realized, oh, like he's part of maybe a certain leaning. He's vegan, right? And he in one of his books, I remember he said, we don't have many leaders that are have a vision for the future. There's no one giving us a roadmap of what to do. Who could we find that could predict maybe till 2050? And then and then the next thing you see him on a podcast with Bill Gates going, so here's the roadmap to 2050, and you're like, oh, okay. So when I same feeling as George Monbiot, once upon a time
Yes.
regarded his opinion as benevolent, smart, and something that I could weigh up well. And now it's gone down a bit, or quite a lot. And Noah Valderrari, now I'm a bit skeptical about his views on things. Do you see what I'm seeing?
Yes.
Yeah.
So he's a good storyteller, and I think that explains most of his popularity. Not so much because of the smart things he says; it's the way he says them.
Right.
Um, and
Yeah.
especially the first, I haven't read the second book. I read the first one, *Sapiens*.
Same.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
exact same.
And okay, so I, I don't know if he's trained as a historian, but for a historian, he's very uh, rough, I have to say, and methodologically not very sophisticated. He has very broad. He depicts everything with very broad strokes, and uh,
Right.
you. So there's a book which is almost acting as the anti-Harari. It's called *The Dawn of Everything*. Um,
The what? The dawn of
the
everything?
dawn of everything. Yeah,
Okay.
and it gives you a much more complicated picture of those societal models and transitions that happened during the Mesolithic and part of the Paleolithic and the Neolithic, how
Mhm.
which kind of a complicated patchwork it really was compared to
Yeah.
what Harari is sketching as, kind of like almost a one line. So not even methodologically, content-wise speaking, is he very breathtaking. He's just very good at telling the stories.
Right.
And then you, with respect to his work aiming at the future, initially it looked almost like he was warning us for a future that may be dangerous. And the more you listen to him recently, the
Yeah.
more you get the impression that he's actually advocating for the future rather than
Yeah.
warning us. So,
Yeah. These
uh,
random quotes, right? That you'd pop up on my Instagram or wherever, YouTube. And
yeah.
it's like, yes, we need to be controlled.
So
You're like,
yeah, and again, it's the kind of person that is popular within the circles of the World Economic Forum, precisely because
yes,
he's the guy that comes up with the stories that they need
good
to
narratives.
support their interventions. Um,
Yeah.
it's We had a similar thing decades ago. So I mentioned the Club of Rome. They came out 1971 Limits to Growth report. The report was representing based on computer simulations.
Mhm.
With computers back then at MIT, which were very primitive compared to nowadays. The
Yeah.
model was extremely primitive as well. It was showing population growth, resource depletion, and pollution with lines that came out of a dot printer. Uh, but that created a big panic worldwide. We were facing the apocalypse, and it would happen soon, and then populations will explode, resources will finish, we will pollute ourselves, and everything will go to the sharks.
Yeah.
Um, and that has been one of the big game changers in the early 70s for uh, policy design and looking at the environment. And that was again a very technocratic basis. It was about, the experts are telling you how the world will evolve, and now the experts have to figure out how we can deal with this in the best possible ways, which would mean population decrease and going within impact footprints that are not harming, which basically means you have to live a life that is almost not, worth living. Just
Yeah.
sit
Yeah.
still and
Yeah.
don't do a lot.
Yeah.
Um, and that, of course, isn't what will mobilize the masses. So then they brought in the Club of Budapest, which was a new age kind of storytelling, in addition to the Club of Rome, to come up with the nice stories why you would have to do that. And they were talking about things like planetary consciousness that will be reached if we all become a big brotherhood of happy people, motivated by kind of Gaian believe in nature and getting together and solving it. So there was a whole storytelling thing next to the technocratic agenda. And and you need that if you want to sell it, if you want to make it
You need
popular.
A good story.
So Harari is one of those, assets they have to come up with the reasons why we should listen to them.
Yeah. And he's trusted.
And he's trusted, because he comes up, and and to be fair, if you read the book, it reads well, and you have many yes, right. That kind of moment where you say, that makes sense, so that must be true, and then before you know it, you're into his philosophy.
You're in the web. Yes. And I think we become very we loosen our defenses on the person after a while, because we know we're like, you've passed the test, we think you're a good guy, so we'll just listen. And then I feel like I might be the only one, but it took me by surprise, because I had the books. So it's like the first book was fine, nothing against it. And now I'm like, could that have been part of a master plan? Or is it just that he's done a kind of an ideological thing? Because he was the guy talking about the lab meat as well, like the putting it in that if someday a piece of steak will be on your plate that looks like a steak but is from a lab. And I remember, I think it was in the book where it was the first steak cost 400,000 to make, and they had it down to $11 now. And you're expecting that someday the steak will appear, but as you just said, it's not going to probably appear at all.
No, it's not even. It wasn't even a steak; it was a burger.
Stop. Yeah, my God. And okay, so the Dublin Declaration is, did you set it up, or are you the,
Well, I'm one of the co-organizers of it. We were like, I don't know exactly, we have to count, but we're around 6, 7, 8 people. I don't know now by heart. Different people involved in, either animal sciences or related, equally frustrated with the current narrative. And we said, okay, we understand that there's a problem here in this debate, because anyone trying to correct numbers or trying to offer a different point of view, at least, because sometimes we also don't necessarily represent the truth, but at least we want to be heard and contrast those opinions and see what comes out of it. But at least you need to have a debate for that.
Debate, yeah.
You need to have confrontation, and that's
disagreement.
Yes, that's how science always evolved, by confronting paradigms and seeing if they hold. But then that cannot happen, because from the moment you try to say anything that is in contrast with the politically correct narrative, you're immediately bullied or harassed, or it's actually not very pleasant to be in a position like mine, because you get emails, you get complaints, you get attacks, you get all of that. And a lot of my colleagues were not even willing to say anything at all, because they know, either because they are shy or because they are afraid of the bullying, for understandable reason, because it is nasty. So what we did is create a declaration where we outline our vision, which is not all that spectacular. It's just saying, look, be careful here, because we think that animals have a place in the food system. We didn't say anything about, how much meat you need to eat, or whether we have to increase or reduce or whatever, or which types of animals we prefer over others, or intensive versus extensive. We don't address all of that. We just say, be careful if you talk about the food system. Don't be a radical. Don't say that we have to radically reduce or even eliminate the herds, because that's going to be problematic. And then we have a couple of arguments for that, but nothing really specific. Just the idea of having a balanced evidence-based discussion on the place of animals in the food system. That's the only thing the declaration ever said. And so that was signed off by about nowadays I think we have 1,200 scientists subscribing to it.
Okay.
But it was a roller coaster because initially it got picked up, and then it was even cited within European policy circles and so on. It gave a lot of courage to many people as well, because they were saying, I'm not the only one. I mean, so many people are actually confirming this, and it gave a bit of courage to the people working to make livestock more sustainable, better, more efficient, whatever you want to achieve.
Yeah.
But we got also very viciously attacked, like freedom of information request, and then they asked for emails. There wasn't really anything in the emails, but then they frame it and they make it look like we're being paid by big meat or whatever.
You're a shill. Yeah, you're a shill.
Even
That's the
though we were
typical thing.
completely unfunded. The only funding we had was by Chagask at the time, because they Chagask actually hosted the event, so they paid for the hosting. Yeah, but it was their money. It was not industry money at all. And that was a limited amount of money just to be able to organize a conference related to the declaration.
It's not that you're a millionaire in the background because of this.
It's ridiculous. And it's so ridiculous that I'm refusing all my speaker fees for reasons that I start wondering why, because in the end they will accuse me anyway.
That's it. Hey man, take the money.
It's ridiculous, and I don't have any funding from animal industries at all. But nevertheless, they try to frame it as an industry initiative. We had hit pieces in The Guardian, we had hit pieces in Vox and other kind of outlets. And then we actually, it turns out, because if you dig into the people writing about you and you start seeing where it's coming from, it turns out that it's mostly coming from a very small circle of activists. There's an activistic journalistic hub that is funded by Silicon Valley and effective altruists, and those journalists are having access to mainstream media as well. So they write for both activistic journals and mainstream media, and they get all those stories out. And then they appear, and so there was a very hostile reaction. And in the end, the declaration, invite people listening to this to have a look at the Dublin Declaration and come up with, what is the concern here? What is in that declaration that you take offense of? The one sentence that has created most of the hostility is something like, we're saying, beware of zealotry and radicalism, or something along those lines. I forgot the exact wording. That has triggered a lot of reaction, specifically from the zealots.
That's pretty funny. Yeah. And do you know what I was thinking? The ultimate irony is, if they're funded by Silicon Tech,
it's ridiculous.
So they're the shills in, maybe not even realizing it, because we are talking about people that are caught up in a movement that might not be financially like a vested interest. They just care about the
no,
narrative.
it's worse than it's worse than that, Chris, because you have the ideological thing, but the Silicon Valley guys, that the effective altruists, they not only fund those journalists, and you can all trace that back. It's all in the open. They also fund the lobby groups for the vegan tech industry, like the Good Food Institute, but they also fund the vegan tech industries, right? The ones that make all those products. So they actually, if you think of it, they are putting their money into certain specific market products, and at the same time funding others to vilify the products of their competitors. That's what they're doing. And then those same people are accusing us of having a conflict of interest.
That's what I mean. Like, it's ironic. Like, and they mightn't even realize it. Some of them, what's happening. Like the Western Watersheds project that aims to take all livestock off, or specifically cattle. They are probably getting funded as well by some thing, like, because it's to have that much strength in, paperwork, legal side of things. You need deep pockets to keep going, and they do. They're crippling farmers to smash them to pieces over the long term. So
in addition to that, we also know that, and there's something recently being uncovered about how part of the European Commission setup was funding NGOs and activists to support their policies, right? There's something, there was a hidden scheme
Yeah.
there almost that is now being uncovered. So I don't know exactly what it will give, but it doesn't look very well. But what I wanted to say, yes, so within every single, because I live in Brussels, right?
Right. Yeah,
I
you're
live
at
not
the
very
melting pot, right? Of
absolutely,
kind of
and worse than
decision
that,
making.
I'm living very, very near to the Commission, so they're my neighbors.
Yeah.
And every single meeting in European Parliament or elsewhere that deals with livestock, one way or another, that touches upon the topic of livestock, all of those meetings have representatives of the lobby groups. Think groups like Eurogroup for Animals and others.
Yeah.
Those groups are so staffed, have so much resources that they can be present anywhere. You know, farmers cannot even do that. Yeah, farmers have their own lobby groups, but they don't have that, flexibility to be present everywhere. And why do they have so much staff and so much resources? Well, because they get money again from those kind of philanthropic foundations, which are basically ideologically driven, effective altruists and others.
And that money, if you trace it back, is actually coming out of our pockets, the taxpayer, a lot of it, right?
A lot of
These
it is taxpayer
foundations are
money as well.
using huge
Yeah.
influence, and they are also generating profits that they're not disclosing.
Yeah.
But they're actually using our money against us, if you know what I mean. Like it's wild. So those foundations are taking basically our money, making money on the side or however to boost other industries. And so it's our money being used to tackle the voices that of dissent that don't want to go along with this or to have a reasonable conversation. It's wild when you put it all together.
Yeah, and it's about time that a proper investigative journalist looks into all of that, right?
Yeah,
There's
I
journalistic
agree.
gold, but nobody seems to be willing to do so.
Yeah. I mean, hey, fair play to you for standing out. Like I think the world needs right now a lot of bold people to just call bullshit and stuff, like really. Because I don't know. I think that's great with the Dublin. Why did it happen in Dublin? The Dublin Declaration.
Because for I don't know, it just happened to be in Dublin because we found we had the possibility to get that meeting room, and one of the people was a Czech, one of the co-organizers was Czech person.
Yeah,
And then
great.
it just happened to be in Dublin. Then we had a follow-up meeting in Denver recently,
Okay, very good.
after which we launched the so-called Denver Call for Action, with 3 action points in addition to the Dublin Declaration. So that happened more recently. And during those conferences, we also brought in experts. And I think it's probably the first time this really happens to have a conference on health, environment, and society, including ethics, at the same time,
Yes. Oh, thank God.
to have the whole conversation.
Yeah.
So we brought in the experts. We came up with a special issue with the papers related to both conferences. So 2 special issues, the Dublin Declaration and then the call for action. So that's how we're trying to make progress to have that,
Brilliant. To
to
get
be
the
able to
movement
have that
rolling.
dialogue.
Yeah. Brilliant. And I mean, the stronger that gets, the more you could hopefully have these things land on policymakers' tables, so that it could maybe counteract the policy that's been
Yeah.
decided upon now.
Yes, but one thing to have in mind here is that the scientific process also is, it's not the perfect machine that some people think it is. It also involves a lot of gatekeeping and a lot of control over what is publishable and not. So we are able to publish our stuff, but probably the doors in the more prestigious journals will be closed to us for those
Yes.
stories.
Yeah.
Whereas all the other, the anti-livestock papers find a much easier access to those journals. So then if a policymaker is confronted with a paper in, I don't know, Proceedings of the National Academy of Science or Nature compared to something we offer, well, plus the fact that after we published our stuff, there was a wave of papers trying to discredit us. in other journals.
Of course. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So then they will throw those papers next to what we are saying, and then policymakers, if they're not able to see through all of this, if they're not able to understand what's going on, well,
Yeah.
what will they do? They will,
Yeah.
it looks too controversial, so we will not address this one, right?
Well,
Even though the controversy is fake.
yeah, and people, Stephanie Aaron, that was on the Dairy Girl Diaries, the one that the farms being attacked, she was saying like, the 51% emissions claim, after the claim was made, it was taken back, but the damage is already done by so like, even if the science comes out and then they say, oh no, it wasn't that way or whatever, it's very hard the public is still stuck with the old, and not the new updated information.
Yeah, same thing for, and it's maybe an interesting example to also add here, is that the claim that livestock's impact is larger than transportation, cars and trains and so on. That's
Frank
coming from the
Midliner?
FAO at the time.
Frank Midliner?
Yeah, so
Midliner?
Frank entered that discussion and tried to correct it, and that was then accepted and moved on.
Very good.
But that 18% number is still showing up sometimes. So livestock creates 18%. It was corrected afterwards to 14.5%. So regardless of the fact that the whole thing was nonsense, you cannot compare, life cycle analysis versus that story. But then it was corrected to 14.5%. And more recently, it has been corrected based on the latest software, the latest modeling approaches by the FAO to 12% of the global emissions. So when the FAO made this move, together with another couple of other things they did, for instance, organizing the first sustainable livestock conference, which was not against livestock, but again, similarly to what I said, all about improving livestock agriculture to make it more sustainable. But that didn't come down well either. Then they came up with a report on animal source foods and nutrition and health, and I was on the scientific committee of that report. So I've been following that firsthand, which again created controversy because it wasn't as radical as they wanted. It was a very balanced report. I invite people to read it. It's very balanced. It's not saying at all that people should gorge on meat or animal foods at all, but it's a balanced view on, weighing pros and contras, and but it wasn't radical enough for those people. So because of those different initiatives of the FAO has come under attack as well, The Guardian and others, by the exact same group of journalists and academics that have been attacking us for the Dublin Declaration. The exact same people. You mentioned Frank Midliner before. So Frank, coming from the same circle again, I tell you, we're talking about 10, 15 people. They dedicated a whole scientific paper to Frank specifically, talking about him. It's 40 pages. It's disguised as a peer-reviewed article. It's published in a scientific journal, but it's a character assassination of Frank, where they mention, he's been at that conference. His research got this funding, and and it's only talking about him. So it's a 40-page
hit
piece disguised as a scientific article. So that's what they then use, during a policy discussion. I don't listen to Frank Midliner because he's a meat shill. And then it's
him.
But there's nothing in that paper that is actually showing something problematic at all. So Frank said at some point in one of his rebuttals, when he was attacked at the front page of the New York Times, he said something like, "Well, I'm sorry, I signed a contract that so he was answering to that piece and saying, look, if you look at my contract at the university, I signed up to perform research in the domain of livestock sciences, and for that I need to collaborate with the industry, and the university actually expects me to collaborate with the industry.
Absolutely.
So if you think this is a problem, well, this is what I'm doing. This is what I'm supposed to do. And how can you be an expert in something if you don't even talk to, or if you don't have, a link with what you're investigating? One thing is to be paid by someone and to shape your narrative according to what they dictate. Another thing is to work with somebody and receive the funding to do your research. And I'm saying that as someone that doesn't get funded, right? To get funded and just report and try to, make that production system better on the demand of the people behind that production system.
Yeah. Wow. I'm interviewing him soon.
Great. Well, you can refer to that. He'll be happy to talk about it.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm sure he probably wouldn't let loose. Oh, the poor guy. And it came into my mind as well. Have you ever heard of Peter Bick, regenerative farming, carbon cowboys, roots so deep you can see the soil down?
Yes.
I interviewed him there a few weeks ago as well.
Okay, brilliant.
But he got funding from McDonald's and who else? Shell. And like, like the painted in the common media or whatever is he got money from McDonald's. How dare he? This is all corrupt. And his answer is, yeah, I asked them for the money. Like, yeah, we need money to do these things. They probably look good for caring about regenerative farming and whatever. And if it actually turns out to be a viable financial concept, why would they not go for it? But he's smeared as well for taking all this money off people that are in departments in, say, Shell and McDonald's that are no longer there, but that decided, hey, we'll give funding to something that does good. And you want, in this game, you want scalability. You want these big fast food chains and corporations to adopt more sustainable agricultural practices. So the thought that you want it to be able to be scaled up so that, say, if there was higher stocking rates of cattle on land and you could prove that this sequesters carbon and boosts biodiversity and creates more yield per field, say, or per acre, then that could replace the intensive farm stuff, increase animal welfare, and boost profits and reduce your reliance on chemical inputs. And there you go. You have a pretty sustainable, healthy burger that tackles climate change, biodiversity loss, makes the consumer healthier, reduces costs for the corporation that's producing the product, and cleans up the supply chain and everything. Why would you not want to encourage that discussion and allow that to flow? But what they look at is, oh yeah, McDonald's funded that, they're evil. Shell funded that, they're evil, and done.
And that's an interesting point, because to be fair, you could also say the same thing about the other side, right? You could say, well, they get funded by those effective out. So fair enough. I mean, if it makes it better and so forth. So that brings you to the most important point, and that is funding as such is maybe not the problem. It's so what should be the main criterion here is it evidence based enough? Is the science behind it robust enough to be able to to be worthy of consideration? And so the funding schemes are in the end not relevant if the outcome is net beneficial. Okay, that's but what is problematic is that if the funding is in place and it clearly is so problematic from a scientific perspective that it's becoming very obvious that what is being promoted as science is being driven by an agenda that is ideological or aimed at profit or whatever is driving it, and then you have a problem. So it's not the funding as such. I wouldn't have a problem with open philanthropy funding some of the plant-based stuff or the lab meat stuff as such. It's only a problem. It only becomes a problem when it turns out that what they're coming up with due to that funding scheme is
these results better not make us look bad.
It's either directed at making livestock agriculture look bad, or it's at promoting their stuff, and the evidence behind it is very shaky. Now again, they will claim the same thing for us, of course, but then they will say that what we are doing is shaky. But then you arrive to the point. So how do you move forward? Your initial question: how does a consumer find, or a person in the street, how someone having to decide about what to eat? How do we find our path in that confusion generated by opposing agendas, accusing each other of being biased and being funded by vested interest? Well, we need somehow to have a dialogue, I think, where it becomes obvious where the actual information is where the science is at its best. And that's now asymmetric. It's asymmetric in the scientific literature because there's a strong filter on the politically correct messages around livestock. It's asymmetric in scientific funding. I cannot propose anything anymore at the European level that is, animal related almost, unless it's about downscaling animals and replacing them by other things. They will not fund it anymore. It suffices to have one activistic, or not even activistic, but one people with preconceived beliefs in the jury to cancel it, because those are very competitive. One small little vote against you will just eliminate it completely. So there's asymmetry in the funding, there's asymmetry in the publication, there's asymmetry in the way it has access to cabinets and political decision-making institutions. There's asymmetry in media. So that's so if you take out the asymmetries and you have a plain level field where everybody is able to have a conversation, then you're able to move forward, I think.
Yeah. And without also being silenced on social media is a big one. The hashtags or whatever, you mention a certain billionaire, you can kind of see that the less views, less shares. I mean, one would hope that freedom of speech and everything gets a bit more loose so that reasonable voices like yourself can, be listened to. And that, as you said, we need to calm down a little bit as well. Like everyone's ready to pounce on one another. And I don't think, cost of living crisis and all the other crises we have are actually going to make us calmer. It's going to make us wilder. I don't know. You're definitely, I'm telling you, Frédéric, you're a breath of fresh air, and I'm delighted I found you. I told you at the start that I wanted to go through slides with you. I think we might leave that for another day because your brain is probably done with this. But I'd love to show the visuals of your work and what you've come up with and the reasonable nature of it, because when people talk about, one thing I realized is when you talk to people and hear their opinions on climate and nature and meat and everything, they kind of run into either it's like they're not fully thought out concepts. They've heard certain things and they go, oh, I thought I heard that's that way, and then they realize, oh, if you corrected this thing at the start of emissions, then you might look at the rest a bit more openly and say the water use of livestock is a very strangely put together thing, where I saw the graph you showed me, or you showed, of how much is actually taken from rainwater versus what's taken from the system. And when you put it up beside all the others, then you go, wow, okay, it's not as much as we would think it is. But I'd love to go through all of those with you maybe next time. If you can find time in your busy schedule, that'd be great. Yeah. Thanks so much. Thanks so much for the work you're doing. Really appreciate it. And I don't know, keep it up and stay bold, keep at it. And if you're ever in Dublin or Ireland, again, let me know. It'd be great to meet you in person. Well done.
Fantastic.
Well done.
Well, thank you for having me on. A great conversation. I enjoyed it, and certainly happy to come back one day and go through the details of it all, because we stayed at the political conceptual level, which I think is an important discussion. But then you also have the more technical discussions, whether that's on health and nutrition or environmental stuff, and the actual misconceptions and discussions about the specific details, which are also important. And it's only when you put all those pieces together that you actually get a view on what's happening. I think if you get a high level perspective, as we discussed today, what is driving this conversation, where could it go to be more productive, what is shaping it, next to the actual scientific content. If you put those together, you start really understanding how you have to move on and be more balanced about it and more and find your solutions, because that's another thing that is okay, we'll stop after this, but there's another thing in the contrast between top-down authoritarian interventions and bottom-up,
Grassroots.
choice-driven kind of actions, is that if you have top-down interventions, you kind of neglect variability within populations. So one very important thing is that there is no single solution here. People can have many different types of diets, and more than that, they actually need many different types of diet because they respond differently to diets.
Yes.
So that should drive the whole thing. And policy should only be there to identify the red lines, right? We need to respect certain thresholds of water pollution. We need to respect certain emission, outputs. We need to respect animal welfare criteria of this nature. So you draw those red lines, and then within that domain, you should leave it maximally open to freedom of choice, because you cannot force a solution into a template that is suitable to everyone. It's just contradicting everything we know about biology and about culture.
Absolutely. We're as different on the outside as we are on the inside. So that should say it all, that one size doesn't fit all.
Yes.
Yeah. Hey, do you know what? They say, like, when you meet like-minded people or you speak to like-minded people or search them out, I've just been able to speak to you about Prof and Noah Val Harari and George Monbiot. That's when you feel like you're going crazy because you're like, where? No one's talking about this. No one is, but you get it. Like you get so you like it's nice to hear that you've been there in your mind and you see the same thing. So I'm delighted to meet a like-minded person. It's great. Thanks very much. Really appreciate it all. And take good care of yourself and keep up the good work.
Thanks. You too. Bye.
Take care. Bye. Thank you so much for tuning into this conversation. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, please hit the like and subscribe button so you'll see more of my content in the future. It would really mean a lot to me because I'm just starting out. Thanks, and see you soon.